mention. Just when you click on a video and the first thing that grabs your eyes is the words rape mention, it's like, oh, all right. Okay, I'll get ready for the rape mention, I guess. I'll mentally prepare. This counts as a rape mention, by the way. Like, the first thing that happens is a rape mention. So thanks for that. I'm in the mindset of a rape mention now. Thanks for putting me in the rape mention state of mind, Lily Orchard. Jesus Christ. Let's go.
At the conclusion of Steven Universe, I made this remark about the LGBT spectrum. This is a slur, and fuck that noise. Spectrum? I'm going to say it is, because this doesn't fit into spoken dialogue very well, and this...
LGBTQIA+. You had to try to say that for... I guess she probably does a lot of takes of each lines of her scripts. And she thinks queer is a slur, even though the Q is for queer.
This is a slur, and fuck.
I mean, look, I can appreciate somebody just being like, hey, my opinion, fuck the majority, we're going with mine. I just don't agree with the takes that she has. You know, I appreciate the energy of like, you know what, I'm going against the entire community because I don't like the word queer personally. But it's right there in LGBTQIA+. It's the Q. That's what it stands for. I don't know.
That noise. But sadly, we don't live in a sane world. We live in a shitty world where this offensive slur is being pushed by a small number.
Why is it necessarily an offensive slur? I mean, queer is no more of a slur than gay is. Gay means all the same things queer does contextually when people are using it as a slur. The insult is you are attracted to people of the same gender as yourself. That is just considered a out-of-pocket negative to most people. That's the problem. The problem isn't the word queer. It's that people use the word queer as an insult, and they do mean like you're attracted to people of the same gender. It's just that shouldn't be like the reason that we've taken it back is that if you are queer, if you're a self-identifying queer and somebody calls you a queer, then you should be like, yeah. No shit. Yes, I am a queer. Like, that's how you take power away from that. What's the difference between queer and gay in this context?
For people as an umbrella term for the entire LGBT community. This attitude is fucking gross, and here...
It's also not that. That's not the point of it. I mean, I know a lot of people use it that way, but the point of it isn't to be a blanket term. It's to be like a mysterious fifth thing, you know?
Is why. The usage of the Q slur as an identifier...
Queer used to be a slur, but yeah, gay also, I think just as much. Gay is and has, I mean, they're both still slurs. Like, to people who don't like gays or queers or fags or whatever word they're using, all of those are only insults because they mean a person who's attracted to the same sex. If you don't consider that an insult, none of those words have any power. And in fact, they could be terms of endearment. You know, it's if I call somebody who sucks dick a fag and they're my friend, they're not going to take that as an insult because we're both people who suck dick, you know, like it just doesn't hit the same way. You know, it's entirely contextual to who's using it. And I think it's way better to reclaim these words than to empower them by acting like you're uniquely offended because of the specific word they used. You know, I don't know. It's just retarded, if you ask me.
Fortunately, the debate itself splits into two separate camps, only one of which I hold a strong and passionate objection to. The first camp are people who choose to use the Q slur as a self-identifier because I don't really know why. Everyone seems to have different reasons for using it, but the general gist of it is that
By the way, I self-identify as retarded. I am neurodivergent. I don't know what it means other than that. I don't know what it's supposed to really mean. I guess I don't have a sub 80 IQ if that's what retarded, sub 70 or whatever, like legal retardation. But that's not how anybody uses the word either. Like, nobody's saying you have a legal IQ under 70 when they call you retarded. You know, they're like, you're different and I don't like it. That's what that means.
Dozens of other terms are not good enough for one reason or another. It's for the adoption of the...
I watch YouTube. There's no digi here. That person died a long time ago. and we all ate part of the corpse.
Q slur is an umbrella term for the entire LGBT community, arguing that the large and diverse pool of terminology is too specific, and we need to make everything more broad and all-encompassing. We can talk about those fucking jackasses in a moment. The central argument to both of these people is that the Q slur wasn't originally a slur and was originally a chaleek or perverse, and it finds its roots in the—
We really don't need we don't need to have a slur for every letter of the alphabet. We don't need to assign every letter a word that is a slur.
English language as a term to mean strange and odd. It also has a third person.
Retarded means nothing medically. It's an outdated medical term. As far as I know, I've never heard of there being a specific mental condition that is still referred to as retarded. So I can't tell who it's making fun of, other than just everybody neurodivergent, pretty much,
In usage, which means something that has been ruined. You may actually remember the word's proper usage from The Nightmare Before Christmas of all.
Dr. Killjoy says this is a failure to accept that the Overton window shifts over time. This video is just this person admitting they are obsolete. Yeah, I mean, that's how I look at. I'm always trying to broaden the Overton window. I want people to say more words and be able to express themselves more openly. And I think trying to guilt people out of saying what they want to say is going to make them hate you so much more than if you just let them say. If nobody was mad about the word faggot, then you literally, what's her name? Melanie Mack would not have a career. Melanie Mack, I don't know if y'all know about her. She's just a supposedly straight, supposedly cis, 35-year-old fucking goth chick, skater girl, goth, fucking generic eyeliner bitch, whose entire career is that she is willing to say faggot. Because apparently, people have never, because of the fact that none of these straight guys have have ever seen a gay before, they don't realize that there's a whole community that just uses it openly and doesn't care. So they all think oh my God, a woman is using the word none of us get to use, and she can say it because she's a woman. So we're going to give her money to be a woman that says faggot. I don't know. Let the straight kids say faggot. It doesn't mean any, I want them to feel like it's not their word, they don't need it. The same way that we don't need the N-word. We don't need to be able to say every single word. It's just a show of respect to be hey, I don't secretly think out of pocket that it's a problem to be this type of person, She handed out side cards that say it at cons. It's literally her whole career. Melanie Mack's entire career is, I'm supposedly straight, but I'll say faggot. And I'm literally any gay person could have given you this service, And I have no reason to think she is straight. I have no reason to think that. She could say it. There's no evidence to it. So, as far as I'm concerned, what meaning is there in this act she's doing? I could grift this. I don't want to pretend to be straight, but I could. If I put on eyeliner and it started saying I'm straight, but I'll say faggot all day long, I'm sure I would have her career. It's that simple. I can't do blackface, or I'd have Eric's career.
All things.
What's this? In here, they've got a little tree. How queer! And who would ever think?
The usage of it has never been, and it never will.
That's not really true. That saying something is rather queer was a pretty soft way of calling something weird, I think.
Be. And the belief that the term originates as an LGBT term is not only wrong, it's a dangerous precedent to set for modern young people who haven't read up on the actual history of language. The Q slur has...
But the history of language doesn't matter. That's the thing. It doesn't matter. It matters in an intellectual sense. It doesn't matter in the context of somebody using the fucking word. If I don't know the history and you don't know the history starts here. It doesn't... Somebody else might have their own history with the word. That's what you're supposed to be worried about. Is if I use this word, I say these words flippantly on my stream because I don't want people watching my stream who can't handle those words. I am actively willing to scare off parts of my audience because I'm trying to build a very particular crowd. And frankly, I don't want to have to be around the kind of people that are going to complain about me using these words. So I'd rather just rip the Band-Aid off and use the fucking words so people don't come to me with the wrong expectations and then get disappointed when they hear me saying this stuff, you know. I forgot the point I'm trying to make.
It's a dangerous precedent to set for modern young people who haven't read up on the actual history.
Yeah, right. Like, the reason I use the language I do is because I have my own history with it. I can explain it. I can talk to people about it. But I think the kinds of people who shut down communication based on the words you use, I'm just not interested in communication with those people. Like, I get misgendered constantly. If I wasn't willing to deal with that, I wouldn't be able to operate through society on the level I do. I just would, like, if I got upset every time I got misgendered, I'd never be able to go outside. I'd never be able to do anything, you know, like, it's an unfortunate burden for me to bear, but if I am not willing to bear it, I just depower myself and I can't do anything, you know, like, I have to be willing to just put more effort in than the average person. And that's where my pride comes from, and my willing, you know, that's where the sense of like, well, actually being queer is better, you know, like, that's the way I feel about it, is like, no, yeah, we are all those words. We are different. We are weird, but being weird is better, you know.
Of language. The Q slur has more in common with the neo-Nazi pejorative degenerate than it does anything else.
I also am fine with being called a degenerate. I cannot fathom someone calling you a degenerate and being upset. I cannot fathom that. Who could possibly fucking care that someone called you a degenerate? Guess what? Everyone is degenerating all the time. Your cells are always dying. You die one day. You get unhealthier until you're gone. You are degenerate. You are degenerate.
What is it? The reason that the crows in Dumbo are looked down on today?
I watch YouTube says people care because they still have shame. People are fucking stupid for that. Shame is one of the dumbest emotions. The dumbest. People just... Ugh. Shame is gross. Shame is unbecoming. Shame makes me personally think you're, like, weak.
Even if we accepted the premise that the Q slur was originally a point of LGBT pride with no other history behind it, that wouldn't be the win card so many people think it is, because guess what else was a point of pride for LGBT people?
I'm just a sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania.
Rocky.
Shame on those who have shame. Yeah, I think you can bully people out of shame. Like, you surely could shame, because I don't think there's anybody you couldn't break down. Like, everybody's insecure about something. If you can identify someone's insecurity and you're dedicated to attacking them and, like, just, you know, punching that insecurity over and over and over again, if that person can't get rid of you, you're going to break them down. You know, you're gonna at some point, they have to either deal with you or deal with the shame. Just stop feeling it, you know, like, stop feeling that insecurity after it's been like, it's exposure therapy to your own insecurity, basically, you know.
Horror Picture Show was a huge piece of LGBT culture, applauded and almost never spoken.
I mean, Lily has, like, a whole complex about, like, problematic queer representation and not wanting any of it at all ever, even though she is problematic queer representation through and through. But it's also just, like, this odd misunderstanding of the past. Like, she, despite trying to talk about language history from a very assumptive perspective, she's not acknowledging the history of, like, the time Rocky Horror came out and, like, the way people were back then. You know, my mom acted in Rocky Horror. She did stage performances of it where she and other people, young, you know, people in their early 20s, acted in front of a screen. There were transvestites in their troupe. There were, you know, people who of gay and straight playing all these characters, but they were just generally, like, weird people, you know. Most of them were very slutty, to be frank. You know, my mom and her friends were were fucking all the time and being outrageous, like problematic people. It was the fucking 70s, you know. It was a time of excess and a lack of moral guidance or compass. The post 60s, you know, drug era that Hunter Thompson wrote about, you know, when the high water mark, when the water broke back and and we drained it all down. Will you say your mom is a slut? No, not now. I said she was when she was like a teenager or in her early 20s, like objectively, but not anymore. But yeah, I mean, my point is that was the times. Like back then, people were just like loose. Everybody was on drugs. Everybody was having sex. You know, like the 70s were a different time. That's Generation X, you know, the lost generation, the children who came up in post ideals society, you know, the Cold War babies, the children raised by television. Like that's the people who got into Rocky Horror Picture Show, the first era of real kitsch, you know, like just ignoring all of that and being like, it's problematic. Queer representation is like, it's from the fucking 60s, you know, you can't compare it to now. The fact that it was queer representation at all was a huge fucking deal, you know, like, I don't know. People didn't try to act like they were holier than thou always.
Very rarely does some LGBT people will dogpile on those people for daring to question a shitty portion of LGBT culture as if we're somehow exempt from the same levels of basic human decency
You are a shitty portion of LGBT culture, Lily.
that other people are. Problems like this are all
Sorry.
over the LGBT community, with problems considered brazenly offensive and gross in any other demographic held up and applauded.
What? Who are these people in the case of Steven Universe that would be considered brazenly gross that you're talking about? Who are the people, like in Glee, are you talking about the characters? Because with RuPaul, that's a real person. Like, that's real people. Who is the morally reprehensive person in RuPaul's fucking Drag Race? I've always heard that described as like a very uplifting show. Like, I know lots of people who love that show because it's so like inspiring and motivational. What the fuck? Meatloaf crying on Trump's Apprentice was hilarious. Yeah, rest in peace, Meatloaf. That guy, pure, you know, late boomer energy right there. But goddamn amazing singer and musician.
Audit as icons. Rocky Horror Picture Show is just the most notable example on a very long list of extremely problematic faves. The existence of TERFs and true scum also indicate that LGBT people are more than capable of being garbage humans, especially to each other. So the completely myopic view of these things is almost expected. Rocky Horror is considered a big part of gay culture, and so
yes, your completely myopic view of everything is expected from you, Lily. Yes, I agree.
the fact that it's almost a minstrel show depiction of trans people isn't important to a lot of its fans because not my problem. So while people might like to make the claim that LGBT people in the 60s used to call themselves the Q slur, this isn't exactly winning the argument because all you're telling...
I just think what Lily Orchard is missing is the FUBU quality of this. That, like, this is made by, like, freaks and gays, for freaks and gays, and no one else cares about it. Like, the reason that these media are so, like, repulsively over the top is so that normies will fuck off. It's to scare away everybody who thinks that we're, like, a bunch of monsters, because the movie is about a monster, but it brings together all the people watching the movie who get to, like, you know, commiserate and create friendships. It's not about the content of the movie, except in who it speaks to and represents, that it brings together. That's why it's important.
Telling me is that the gay community of the 60s was extremely problematic. Hey guys, guess what? One of the N-words appears in Martin Luther King's letter to Birmingham jail. That doesn't mean you should start running out and calling people that. If this letter was written today, the word would not fucking be there because we've long...
You should not have bothered bringing the N-word into your video. Also, that's not the N-word, but okay, whatever.
Since realized that it never should have been used in the first fucking place because that's how the evolution of cultural enlightenment actually works. It was always unacceptable.
The evolution of cultural enlightenment works? I don't know about that.
did it anyway is a bad mark on them. But hasn't the Q slur been reclaimed like the other N-word was? Billy, that's not the same thing. What?
The other N-word. Why aren't they the same? Hold on. All right, why aren't they the same thing?
Why? Because nobody is actually dumb enough to try and use the N-word in a civilized conversation.
What? Lily, go outside. Literally, go outside. Do you live in the United States? Go outside one time and listen to any conversation you hear. I guarantee by the end of a day, you'll hear the N-word. I live in Norfolk. I could fucking step out my front door and I'll probably hear the N-word. This is insane. This is a crazy take. Civilized conversation doesn't include the N-word. What conversation are you having with whom, when, where?
An uncommon but persistent defense of the adoption of the Q slur is to draw comparison to the reclamation of the N-word by black people, but reclamation and adoption are two very different
Shouldn't let black people roll off your tongue like that.
things. Despite the long-standing reputation, you're still going to get funny looks, you're still going to be asked to leave public places, you're still...
Lily, it's not like that. That's not true. No black person is getting kicked out of public places for using the N-word. First of all, usually people who use the N-word are surrounded by other people who use the N-word, regardless of their skin color. It's usually just something everyone's doing. It just depends on where you are more than anything. If you're on the internet, you can't use the N-word because people here are from everywhere. There are people who've never heard such a thing on here. There are people who have been protected from these things, or people who have never seen a white person use it who wasn't a massive racist, you know. So as a white person, you definitely can't say it. You don't know what kind of signal you're sending. You don't know who you're empowering to use the word. But to think that you'll get kicked out of a location for using the N-word, again, I can't go anywhere without hearing the N-word in Norfolk. It's impossible. That's just absolutely insane.
still going to be treated about the same way as if you publicly uttered any other vulgarity, and you're still going to be laughed at.
Also, no other vulgarity will get you kicked out or laughed at any place. Does Lily think that people aren't swearing out in public? Where do you go? Anywhere? Ever? At all? I don't know. I mean, I guess I hang out in maybe places where there'd be more than the normal amount of swearing. Lily is only online. Yeah, but everyone swears online and they say the N-word more than anywhere else. So, like, this is just a made-up reality. Like, this is what Lily thinks the world must be, but has not observed it to, like, have any confirmation. This is, like, totally alien core takes right here.
That if you're pathetic enough to complain about that. You wouldn't stand up and scream fuck in the middle of a restaurant, and the same rule applies there. Nobody...
Yeah, but it's not the same. You're not talking about standing up and screaming it. This is now just creating a total straw man that has nothing to do with your original argument about people not being able to say the N-word in polite society. Saying it at all is not the same as shouting fuck. Also, if it's so impolite, why are you doing it in your video?
Nobody pushes for the adoption of the N-word. Nobody tries to rebrand people of color as the N-word community. Nobody gets bitchy if someone else doesn't want the word uttered in their presence. While someone may use it to refer to themselves, they would never be so stupid as to use it to refer to another.
Lily, as I just need to tell you, from one irresponsible white person to another. Now, technically, I consider myself sunburnt, not white, but I'm just telling you, just don't talk about the N-word. Just don't put a segment in any of your videos about the N-word. Don't have an opinion about the N-word. Forget you've ever heard of the N-word if you can. That's the best way you can handle this. Forget you've ever heard of this word. Bleach it from your vocabulary. Relearn every rap song you've ever heard and say homie instead. Like, find another 2 syllables. If you ignore the N-word, it'll go away. It'll go away for you. You can make it go away for yourself. And as a white person, that's the responsible decision. Homie, we gonna be all right. Exactly. Thank you.
It is an antagonistic word and is treated as such. The Q slur is
not antagonistic if you're somebody who calls all of your friends the N-word all the time.
unfortunately not afforded the same level of restraint. People treat reclamation as if it's some kind of magical society changer, as if they're
It literally is.
the Supreme Court of language. When people fill my ear about the fact that the Q slur is being reclaimed as a term by the LGBT community, all I can really wonder is when this actually happened, because it seems to be an extremely contentious topic, because the word has a harmful and
It's contentious because you are mad about it and you won't let it go. And nobody really understands why. You don't seem to have a good reason other than you just think everyone's wrong.
deadly legacy. People love to talk about the LGBT community of the 60s, but what about the people who were beaten and killed by others while having it screamed at them? What about the people who've experienced the harsh truth of being called that slur and are quite frankly disgusted that some idiot kids would have the nerve to just declare that everything's okay now? It's time to come back to what I was talking about.
It's not that anybody's saying everything's okay. People are telling you what you can do to be okay. You can decide that you are not offended by the word, and then you will never have to worry about it again. What you can do is silently, if somebody uses it and you don't think they're using it in the way that you don't think they're a queer person who's using it endearingly, you can go, I heard that, and keep note of that person. But when like a gay friend is like, sup queer, maybe you could say, hey, I don't like being called that. And then you can gauge if this person is cool with you or not. Maybe they'll be like, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I didn't mean, like, they'll now keep that in mind, something you're not comfortable with. Or you could be like, oh, just sucking dick as usual. And then everybody's rizzed the fuck out, then all of a sudden everybody goes Super Saiyan, just the room lights up. Like, that's how to be human about this.
About earlier, it's not just that people are using it to refer to themselves. That would be a non-issue, but instead there's a big push to use the Q slur as an umbrella term for the LGBT community, regardless of that community's actual feelings on the matter. And speaking as someone in the LGBT community,
it's just your feelings. You can speak on your feelings. You don't have to speak on the community. Nobody should be speaking on the community. We get that you don't like the word queer. You don't have to make it everyone else's problem.
No. Fuck no. Are you fucking kidding me? No. Putting aside the fact that this is, as I've established, a derogatory term meant to describe something as a strange other and has a violent and hateful legacy attached.
See, I don't feel degraded by being called queer. It doesn't make me feel bad.
To it. The LGBT community already has an umbrella term.
Do people follow this Lily person a lot? Let me just scroll down a little bit. That is 141,000 subscribers. This is 120,000 views. Now, granted, Lily Orchard is probably the most controversial trans YouTuber, like, queer themed YouTuber. She talked shit about me before either one of us had transitioned way back in the brony days. So she's been starting shit the whole time she's been online. She's a more successful that anime snob because instead of being audaciously anti-queer and impossible to understand through your Greek accent, she's audaciously victim complex SJW, like cranked to 11 queer, which for a time was a way to get some attention, especially her Steven Universe. The reason she brings up Steven Universe all the time is by far her biggest video is calling it fascist or whatever.
LGBTQIA+. This term, while indeed murder on the vocal cord, serves the job of an umbrella term much better by clearly conveying everything it's meant to convey. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, intersex, asexual / aromantic, and everything else. The everything else at this
I watch YouTube. You got warned about the digi thing. You gotta learn how to do it right. Damn, I couldn't even ban you fast enough before you got banned by the other moderators.
point being,
You really got to learn how to do it right.
LGBTQIA+,
When you inevitably come back with your next account, figure out your gimmick.
or the acronym as it's come to be known, isn't perfect. Not only is it awkward to say, leading many to shorten it to just LGBT, it's a mess of redundancies and strange decisions, like questioning getting its own letter while pansexual and non-binary people are shunted into the plus. Those should be flipped around, or perhaps just take out the stupid plus and add the P in the end. But it does something that no other umbrella term has ever bothered to do. It's inclusive. It's a mess, but like any acronym, it can be adjusted. Queer, on the other hand, is an obfuscating term. It strips out the nuance of non-straight identities and waters them down into an amorphous gray sludge. And when you're
that's not what it's supposed to do. Hold on. Can we real quick, because Lily has focused so much on the original meaning of queer. But what is a gender identity that does not correspond to established ideas of sexuality and gender, especially heterosexual norms? Queer geek culture has featured gay themes since the 1980s. So in that context, it does kind of sound like it's just a homogeneous, like, anything that falls into the spectrum. But when you describe it as identities other than... Maybe she's more right than I'm thinking, because I'm thinking of queer as basically like, well, I'm not necessarily gay, lesbian, bi, trans. I'm, again, mysterious fifth thing. Like, to me, it's like saying, I don't, like, each of those is a category, Gay is, I'm a man into men. Lesbian is a woman into woman. Bisexual implies you are into men and women. Trans implies that you are not the gender that you were assigned at birth. So where does the, like, to me, queer is just like there's plenty of in between all of that. Like, there's plenty of extra that could be put in there. So that's what all falls under queer to me. But I guess I appreciate that I think that Lily's complaint is somewhat true, that some people are just using it to blanket all these identities together as though they're the same thing. But I also think the word gay is also used that way. Like, the word gay is, while it has been taken to mean like men into men, has also just kind of been applied to all of this. And honestly, what's the harm in like unionizing us? Like, what's the harm in giving us like a blanket thing to rally behind that just makes it like, do you want to force every single normie to memorize what all these fucking flags mean? They're not going to, like, if we just say, hey, queer representation, hey, gay representation, like, that's a start,
Trying to apply that to everybody, well, imagine taking the vast array of pride flags and replacing them all with a single brown square. That's what queer
Why?
does to people's
No,
identities.
it doesn't.
And that's not helpful because
That's
everyone
not a
experiences
thing.
oppression differently.
It's not a
Bisexual
defective
people can get
metaphor.
shit from gay people and called deceitful. Trans people get shit from both of them and called mentally ill. Asexual
Yeah, but again, this is specific. This is case by case. We really gotta, instead of like, the problem I see with a lot of internet discourse is like, people will read a troll say a thing, and then they'll abstract that and talk about it like, oh, this is a problem in the community. There's people who say this. No. Talk about the people. Name the names. Those people are the problem. It's not a community problem. It's a community hasn't kicked these people out of it yet problem. If we don't know who they are, we can't fucking do anything about them. You have to name names. You have to ban, block. You have to make a show out of these people.
people get shit from literally fucking everybody for no good reason whatsoever. Non-binary people are still being expected to prove they exist, with both TERFs and TrueScum constantly giving them shit, again, for no good reason whatsoever. And now we're grinding just a little more shit into everyone's eyes by expecting them to adopt a new identity that is explicitly designed to obfuscate things.
No
and
one's
reduce people
being expected to adopt queer as their personal identity just because you accept the term. Like, if somebody calls you queer and you're like, I don't identify as queer, I don't like being called that because it's not what I am. Again, that's like a boundaries thing. Like, you don't have to make it into like a cute joke you do with your friends. It doesn't have to be the gay N-word that you think it is.
Entities down to a vague, meaningless non-word.
Or don't think it is, whatever.
Nobody is ever helped by being covered with a sheet, and I say no. I thoroughly reject the notion that this term should be adopted as an umbrella term for an extremely diverse set of people with vastly different experiences, needs, and concerns. We have enough problems to deal with when the government tries to erase our identities. We don't need to be erasing each other's identities.
Just use the word you want. Just use the words you want. Don't bitch about everybody else's words. Just use the words you want and make them catch on.
Identities as well. Apply it to yourself if you feel so inclined, but if you insist on using
apply it to yourself if you feel so inclined. I'll just think less of you and bitch about your identity and tell you how the word that you've chosen is actually inherently bad. But, use it if you want. I'll just be over here judging you, idiot. What the fuck, Lily?
it to describe others, using it as an umbrella term, calling LGBT characters queer characters, or using stupid fucking terms like queer studies, or start calling people who don't want.
Some of them aren't I don't know. I don't know that the character is gay. Like, just because a guy kisses another guy and they're like, yeah, we're fucking, like, do I know that character is not bisexual? Do I know that they're not, again, a mysterious fifth thing? Like, I don't want, if a character doesn't say explicitly what they identify with, queer is a good catch-all to be able to describe them.
Want to be associated with a slur, nasty names, and start making up nonsense about it being a turf dog whistle, then you can go eat 1,000 prickly dicks right in the ninth circle of hell.
And now the sexual threatening, and by the way, eat a bag of prickly dicks, complaining about problematic language, and then you're like, oh, by the way, if I don't like you, you should do something sexually ungratifying. You know, like this is not. What are you doing, Lily? This is not the look.
Where you fucking belong, you jackass.
By the way, I wasn't trying to like imply that her voice